I'm Tony Rossetti, an old Mafia man who has lived his life moving through shadows and danger. I climbed to the top ranks of the American Mafia, but eventually found myself betrayed by my own criminal family, igniting an irresistible desire for revenge. Things weren't simple. I got involved in deadly confrontations with enemies far more powerful than I had imagined, uncovering betrayals and conspiracies much deeper than I anticipated. When they tried to take me out, I had no choice but to flee, leaving the city behind to hide in a small village. I was searching for peace, far from the life of crime, but even there, I couldn't escape the ghosts of my past that haunt me at every turn. Episode 1. I advise you to listen to the story before bed. Put your headphones on, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and then immerse yourself in the story. If you are interested in enjoying people's stories, this channel is for you. So if you are interested, click like this video and subscribe to the North Stories channel to settle on new, more amazing stories. Let's go. In those days, the wars between the Mafia families were at their peak. There was a constant struggle for influence and territory, and the Mexican Mafia was starting to expand into the United States. They knew me as the Wolf, a name I gave myself to terrify them. I hunted them like wolves hunt their prey. In those moments, I felt absolute power. But behind that power, fear lurked, the fear that one day everything would turn against me. One day, Vincent came to me with new orders, but he looked worried. He told me there was a rumor about a plot to assassinate me. I knew at that moment that things were starting to spiral out of control. There were people within the family who wanted me dead. Maybe they feared my ambitions, or maybe they feared that I had become too powerful. I knew that if I did nothing, my end would be near. I began to take extra precautions. I increased the security around me, and I stopped trusting anyone. One night, as I was returning home, they tried to ambush me. A group of men had set up a trap for me. They had enough guns and ammo to kill me 10 times over. But I was ready. I had enough information to know they would come that night. I set a trap for them and managed to turn the tables on them. They were all dead within minutes, but that moment made me realize something important. I couldn't live like this anymore. I could no longer sleep peacefully. The nightmares haunted me every night. The faces of those I had killed followed me wherever I went. I knew that if I stayed in this world I would die, either by a bullet to the head or slowly from fear and anxiety. I began to think about escaping, about leaving everything behind and disappearing. That would mean betraying everything I had known, but it was the only option in front of me. A friend of mine, a man who had worked with me in the Mafia for years, knew of a place in Mexico, a small village in a remote area where no one knew who you were or what you had done. That village meant survival to me, a chance to start a new life, far away from all that blood. I decided to leave one dark night. I left no trace behind, just took a little money and what I could carry. Now I'm in Mexico, in that village my friend told me about. I live alone, far from the world, far from everything. No one here knows that I was once the Wolf. No one knows my crimes or my past. But the truth is, I can't escape myself. Those memories. It's been months since I went into hiding in that remote village in Mexico, where I now live under the alias Miguel Garcia. Choosing a Mexican name was essential, as it helped me blend in with the locals and avoid any suspicion that my true identity might bring. Although I live a quiet life here, I can't forget my previous life. Like a ghost haunting me, my past clings to me, trying to suffocate me every night. The village is quiet, perhaps too quiet for a man like me. There's nothing here but small farms and simple people who know nothing of the harsh world I fled from. Most people smile at me when they see me, and some even try to talk to me, but I always keep my distance, afraid that a casual conversation might reveal a secret that could lead to my demise. I had built a simple life in this village, working on a small farm owned by an old woman named Maria. She believes that I'm just a migrant who fled the violence of a Mexican city. I didn't share many details with her, she doesn't ask, and I don't talk. All she needs to know is that I'm a man trying to escape his past, and that I need work and a place to sleep. But even in this far-off place, there's always a feeling that something bad is about to happen. I lived my life in New York on the edge of a knife, and there was always danger looming on the horizon. Now, I know that the Mafia doesn't forget easily. I abandoned them, and they might consider me a traitor, something that's unforgivable. These thoughts torment me day and night, despite my efforts to escape them in various ways. After several months of apparent peace, I began to notice small things. A strange man appeared in the village every few days, speaking with a heavy American accent, spending his time in the local bar. He would come and watch me from a distance, never attempting to get close. I wasn't stupid. I knew that this man might be an agent sent from New York to find me. At first, I tried to ignore him, but eventually I realized that wouldn't help me. I knew that if I didn't act quickly, my true identity might be revealed soon. One dark night, I decided to take a bold step. I snuck into the bar where that stranger was sitting, taking a seat far from him, but I kept an eye on him. He was talking to the bartender coolly, and when he left, I followed him from a safe distance. The man headed to a small hotel on the outskirts of the village, where he was staying. I waited until I was sure he was in his room before sneaking around to the back of the hotel. I was trained for this, and I knew how to get in without anyone noticing. When I reached his room, I found the door locked, but that wasn't much of an obstacle. I managed to pick the lock easily and entered the room quietly. Darkness filled the room, but I could see the man sitting on the bed, cleaning a small weapon. I didn't waste any time. I lunged at him quickly, grabbing him from behind and squeezing his neck until he lost consciousness. When I was sure he couldn't resist anymore, I tied him to a chair in the middle of the room. When he woke up, he found himself bound, his eyes filled with fear and anger. I didn't need to speak much. The questions were swirling in my mind. Who sent him? How much did he know about me? Was he alone, or were there others? Who sent you? I asked coldly. The man tried to dodge, but he knew well that I wouldn't let him live if he didn't give me what I wanted. After a moment of tense silence, he finally spoke. Vincent Valentino, he sent me. Those words hit me hard. Vincent? How did he know I was here? Had he been watching me all this time? I had felt that Vincent's betrayal was closer than ever, but now it was confirmed. He knew I would run, and maybe he was waiting for the right moment to strike. How many of you are there? I asked him again. Just me, I swear. They wanted me to confirm if it was really you here. I wasn't supposed to kill you, not yet. I knew he was lying, but I didn't have time to waste any more time. Is there anyone else in the village? I asked. He shook his head in denial, but I had already decided his fate. I couldn't let him return to New York, or my life here would end soon. I drew the gun I was carrying and quietly shot him. I knew that if I wanted to survive, I couldn't leave any trace. I cleaned the room thoroughly and hid the body in a place far from sight, in a nearby forest. After that, I returned to my farm. Dawn was starting to break, and I felt a deep relief that I had managed to deal with this threat quickly. But even so, I knew that this man might only be the beginning. Vincent wouldn't stop pursuing me, and he would send more men to confirm whether I had survived. I decided that day to prepare myself to leave again. I wouldn't let them find me here. I would need a plan to escape from Mexico, perhaps to a more isolated place, where no one could find me. I began preparing to leave everything behind again, even the simple life I had started to get used to in this village. As I prepared to flee, another thought began to form in my mind. Why had Vincent targeted me so aggressively? Did he see me as a threat to him? Perhaps he thought I knew too many of the family's secrets, and that I might use them against him. Or maybe he feared that I would one day return to take revenge. A bold idea began to take shape in my head, the idea of returning to New York and avenging everyone who betrayed me. But I remembered in the end that revenge would only bring me more pain. Before I could decide my next move, another unexpected incident occurred. One night, as I was wandering through the fields surrounding the farm, I heard a sound coming from a distance. There was a group of men speaking a language unfamiliar to me. As I got closer, I saw them, a group of Mexican soldiers approaching the village. They were armed, and it I had no expectation that the simple villagers would step in to save me. They knew me only as a simple migrant worker, a transient figure in their lives, but they chose to stand by me in a moment when I didn't expect support from anyone. When the armed group of villagers appeared, I felt a mix of surprise and gratitude. They didn't have the training or weapons that the soldiers had, but they knew their land well and moved swiftly and lightly through the fields and forests. The clash between the villagers and the soldiers began to intensify, and I used those moments to sneak to a safer place where I could assess the situation and plan my next move. I saw Maria, the old woman whose farm I worked on, standing among the fighters, holding an old rifle in her trembling hands. She was shouting words to encourage people to resist, a scene I could never have imagined witnessing from her. I hid in one of the old barns behind the farm, trying to make sense of the chaos surrounding me. But I knew I couldn't stay there forever. The soldiers had taken control of most of the village and were searching houses one by one. If I didn't act quickly, they would find me. I decided it was time to make a decisive move. I needed to escape, but I could no longer rely on conventional methods. I had one option: to flee via the river that ran along the edge of the village. The river was dangerous, with fast and turbulent waters, but I was ready to take the risk. All I had to do was reach it before they caught me. I cautiously left the barn, sneaking between the trees and ruined buildings. The soldiers were getting closer, and the sound of gunfire was drawing nearer. On my way, I encountered one of the villagers, a young man named Ricardo, who was injured in his arm but continued to fight. He stopped when he saw me, looking at me with eyes full of pain and determination. "You need to go now," he said to me in a low but firm voice. "The river is your only way out. I'll try to distract them." There was no time to argue with him. I looked into his eyes and felt an indescribable gratitude. I nodded and ran toward the river with all the strength I had. The river was only a few kilometers away, but the path to it was filled with dangers. I saw some soldiers along the way, speaking in their language as they approached. I had to move quickly and quietly at the same time, taking advantage of the darkness and the noise from the fighting in the village. When I finally reached the river, my heart was pounding. The water was moving with frightening speed, but I had no other choice. I took off some of my heavy clothing and plunged into the water. The current was incredibly strong, but it carried me away from the village quickly. I fought to stay above the surface. Episode 2? Available in the channel.